So hopefully you've now either copied the palette that I created in our speed through video, or you've created your own and it looks similar to this, and you have some kind of a primary palette, you have a neutral palette, you have an error palette, success palette, accent palette. Again, you might not need accents in all of the projects. Just these four might be enough. You might need a lot more, especially if you're working on projects where you have a lot of data visualization. So you're gonna need more different hues to ensure that everything works for those types of things. But again, depending on your project needs, depending on how big the project is, what type of a product it is, and so on, this can look very differently. This should be enough for any kind of starting point for web app or mobile app. So hopefully that's going to be enough for now. We can always expand upon it. We can always remove things if we're not using them. So yeah, now it's time to look at typography. When it comes to typography, we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to think of different use cases, assign different typography styles to them, and then figure out, besides that, what other rules we need to take into account when we're planning our typography. There are different approaches on, again, font sizes, font styles, how many different font families you're going to use. Don't try to use too much, especially if you're a beginner. It's best to just use one, two tops. And also, depending on the type of your project, you might use like a lot of variation between your sizes, or there might be other more subtle differences. What I'm thinking about is the biggest difference I see is mobile apps and web applications are going to have smaller differences in sizes. So like the largest font size you're going to use is going to be somewhere in the range of 40, while on websites, especially those kind of inspirational one, presentational ones, you're going to use large typefaces too. So keep those things in mind. Rules are gonna differ based on the type of project you're working on. Okay, so we have colors ready. Let's now work with typography. To make this entire process a little bit easier, I am going to kind of decide on a type of project just so that I can explain all of my thinking from the lens of that project. If you want to learn more about typography, we have a typography course that you can take a look into. So let's say that this is a responsive web application that we're going to have. So if we take that into account, then we're going to start things off with a couple of headings, maybe some body text that we're going to need. Knowing a lot of web projects often require some kind of either graphs or tables. We know that we need to have specific styles of typography included. So with all of that in mind, let's start things off with a base text that we're going to use. So if we're thinking about an application like that, I think we can just work with Enter. I think I've used it not on purpose, but on a lot of other examples as well. The main body text that you're going to have, body text / paragraph text, is most likely going to be somewhere in the range of like 15 to 17. With a lot of web apps, I think the safest route to go is actually having a regular text at 16. I don't think you need to worry too much about character spacing or letter spacing at this time. Paragraph spacing, we're gonna calculate from the line height, and line height we're gonna get from the font size. So if I didn't mention it already, when I'm working with type, there's two approaches I have. I have a different approach for calculating line height based on, is it a heading or is it something where a lot of text is going to be used? Basically, is like 2 or 3 lines the top, that it's going to go in, or is it something where we can have paragraphs of text? Knowing that body or paragraph text, we can have a lot of text, I'm going to actually work on paragraph spacing and line height. All of my line heights are the places where I do want to include my either 4-point grid or 8-point grid. Since this is a web application that's going to be responsive, I know that I also have to think about all of the different cases where I might need to squeeze in a lot of data in small spaces, so I'm going to work with 4s. Therefore, all of my line height is going to be divisible by 4. I'm not going to worry about font sizes. Those things can be bigger or smaller, it doesn't matter. It can be something like 17, and I wouldn't care. But for the line height, I do want to make it divisible by 4. So I think I'm going to start it with 24. And you can kind of go in the range of like 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. So just multiply it by something like that, and you're going to get a number like this. As long as that number is divisible by 4, you should be good to go, and you can always try it out. So let's just make the width of this text something like 30, and I'm going to take this and just kind of copy it over and over and over again, and you can see that it's going to look good and it's going to be legible. Now when it comes to paragraph spacing, that's the part that happens when you hit enter. Right now there's no difference between multiple paragraphs, so what I like to do is I like to make it half of this, or kind of round it around that, to make it divisible again by either 4 or 8. So I think 12 is going to be fine, because right now if I take another line of text, it's not going to fit in well in here, and it's not going to be as legible as everything else is. So there's some kind of a visual break in here, but it's not a full line height. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So 12 seems like a perfect number in here. Okay, that should be our body text. I'm gonna attach a color to it. You don't have to. I'm just kind of the person that hates having things that are not using styles. Another thing that I know that I'm gonna need in different places across the interface is I'm gonna need to have some kind of a bolder version of this. So I often skip like a weight. So if we have regular, medium, semi-bold, I would go from regular to at least semi-bold, if not bold, immediately. And I think I'm going to go with bold in here and just call it body text bold. And then another use case I know I'm going to need with text is I'm going to have it as an underline. So I'm going to have this as body text link. Again, not all of these are necessarily connected to a type scale you're creating, but you're already assigning some use cases to the fonts that you're going to use. Besides that, I do think we're gonna have to have some kind of a smaller body text for some, I usually call it just like description. And description, I'm gonna make 14, and I'm gonna make it 20, and I'm gonna make this 8 in case I ever am gonna have multiple paragraphs of it. Then in here, you can go inside and just kind of maybe use semi-bold, maybe bold. I don't know. For now, I'm going to keep it at semi-bold, hoping that's going to be fine. Again, you can always update it once you kind of figure out how the items that you're going to create are going to look like. And again, when you're exploring things, especially my idea of how I would approach all of this is I would actually create like a screen or 2 or 3 with the most important elements where I'm not limited by any styles that I've created, and just figure out if things are working and what's working better and not. And then I would have those things and turn them into actual styles, and from then start to build components and everything. So I'm gonna make it bold in the end as soon as I kind of zoomed in and out, and you can always zoom into 100% to see how it looks. I do think that it looks better like this. And I'm gonna make this description link, and let's just add an underline to it. Perfect. Just for example purposes, I might just use descriptions as a little bit of a lighter shade. Okay, after that, there might be a need where you're gonna have to have something like really, really small, maybe like a caption text. But I would never go below 12. I think I'm gonna maybe make it even 13. And I'm gonna make that 20 or even like 16. And this is gonna be 8. And I'm gonna keep it like that. Not sure if I'm gonna need it, but based on some of the projects that I have behind me, I know that often I'm gonna need something that's gonna be like really, really small, but yeah, that's it. Okay, so we have body text, description, caption. We already have some links in here. And what else do we need? We are most likely gonna need some kind of a subheading. And I do want to make that a little bit bigger, like noticeable bigger. And I am going to just make it semi-bold. I don't think I'm going to need bold in here. I do want to make it a lot bigger in here. And I'm not going to need paragraph spacing because for all of the subheadings and headings, I'm not going to need that. I might play around with a version where I do kind of decrease the character spacing, because in a lot of these like larger uses of your fonts, they're always built for sizes like this for paragraphs. So when you're making titles or when you're using all caps, those are the places where I would start to either decrease letter spacing or increase for things like all caps. Okay, so we have that subheading. I think that's perfect. And then let's have another one, and this one is going to be pretty large, something like this, maybe like this. Again, when it comes to titles and subheadings, I would usually multiply it like 1.2, 1.3. So maybe leaving it at 32 is going to be fine. But one other thing that I know is a lot of my headings are gonna be next or in line with buttons and icons, and if I make those like 40 or 48, I kind of like to keep the line height that way, but it's in no way needed. It's just like a small habit I've built, which if you're aware of it, perfect. If you're just doing it because you have no reason for doing that, then that's kind of a bad thing. So I would either make this bold or like really extra bold. For the sake of consistency, I'm going to use less different weights, just because then for that one specific case, we don't bloat the size with rendering another font weight. And developers are going to love you for it. Your users are going to love you for it because you're not introducing an additional weight. So if we have bold in here, we have semi-bold, regular bold, regular bold, regular bold. So this semi-bold is now kind of standing out a little bit, but I do have a couple of more use cases, so I know I'm going to use semi-bold as well, so I'm going to keep it. Okay, and this is going to be a heading. So a couple of other use cases that I just mentioned. One of them is button text. And button text, you can decide if it's going to be all caps or not, or if it's going to be something like a sentence case, or just kind of figure out how you're going to use it. I do like to make it a little bit smaller than paragraph text, but a little bit bolder. Not fully like body text bold, but something like this is going to be fine. And I am going to make it like this. And let's make this 24. And now we have our button text. And another use case that you might have is like navigation. But honestly, maybe something like navigation can just take on the style of the button text. It depends. I might make that a little bit bigger or smaller depending on like what I need. But I think I'm just going to keep it as button text or like navigation text. So yeah, I think that's going to be enough styles for our app right now. We can always introduce more if we're going to have a use case for it. So another thing when you're thinking about designing responsively is figuring out if there are some sizes that are going to kind of change their appearance and rules. if they're viewed on a smaller or larger displays. With heading like this, 26, I don't think we need to actually have a different heading size for our mobile devices. I think it's going to be enough and it's going to work well there too. But if I was making a larger size, I would include something else in here. And we can go over and maybe have it like 28 just to make it a little bit different. But yeah, I think I'm going to keep it like this. I think it's going to be enough even for responsive screens. But if this were more like a presentational website, I would create a lot more styles, and I would then include different logic based on scaling. So I would have mobile body text, I would have maybe tablet body text and desktop body text, and kind of showcase how those scale across different breakpoints that we have in design. Right now, I don't see a need for it. So let's just turn these into styles. And once we're done, we're going to have our typography or type scale, and we're going to have our colors, and we can move on to other things. So an assignment for this is going to be to turn all of these into styles and to name them correctly. If you're going to need help, I'm going to have again, like a speedy walkthrough video of that as well. See you in the next lesson.